Hey there! Today we're going to talk about this pen, and this may look modern, but it is a vintage pen. It has a lever, and it is a Waterman pen. I got this via eBay. It was in externally pretty good shape, um, and I re-sacked it, I polished the nib a bit, etc. I've recorded all of that, so I'm going to cover the parts of the pen, tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, but before I do a writing sample, I'm going to show you the whole restoration process that I undertook, which means putting in a new sac, getting out the nib and feed, polishing the feed, polishing the exterior of the pen a little bit, making sure the clip is nice and shiny again. Some of you may not find that interesting. Feel free to fast forward to the writing sample, but I know that there are some people out there who would like to see these actions, and that's all let's do it. So I thought I'd just record the process, and no, it is not a multiple-hour movie. It's all fairly under control. All right, let's start with the pen. Top of the pen, you have a little gold thing, and you have a nice gold clip, and the gold clip actually says, I'm not sure whether you can read that, but it says Waterman's. I like this clip shape. Simple, nice. You get a little breather hole in the cap down below there to make sure it doesn't draw a vacuum. A nice center band, just two bands actually, so maybe it's center bands. As you can see, it's a nice shiny sort of plastic model. Here you have the lever. I'm going to show you that in the maintenance bit of the video a bit more. So for those of you not familiar with the lever system, the lever, you can very gently, you can sort of pull that out. I'm not going to do that because there's ink in there now. Inside the lever is a little metal bit, and once you sort of operate that lever, that thing is pushed inside against the rubber sac. The rubber sac is compressed. Put it in ink, you do that, sac is compressed, it decompresses, and then it draws up ink. It's a very nice, fairly simple mechanical system. Uncap the pen, it screws off. Here you have the nib. The nib says NW5, which is some Waterman code, undoubtedly, except I don't know what it stands for because I'm not a Waterman expert. On top there, it's not nib damage, that's just some ink. It's a 14 karat gold nib. It says Waterman's. It says 14 CT for 14 karat. And it's a nice nib. Nice little bit of flex, very pleasant to use. It's not a wet noodle, but it's nice and flexy. Alright, we have these threads, not sharp at all. We have the section, just to show you the shape. Nice and tapered, and it flares out quite strongly, and making for a very pleasant pen to hold actually. The feed is one of those nice vintage flat feeds, no fins there, and yet it's a pretty nice and wet pen. If you want, you can post it. I'm always a bit careful when I try to do that because I don't want to damage the vintage pen, scratch it or anything. As you can see, very decent size. Posted, it's on the large side, and unposted, I think it's not huge, but it's definitely not one of those really small vintage pens either. Final thing I should say is on the barrel, it has a little imprint. It says, oops, focus. It says Waterman's made in England, and I think that's all I can say about the pen. The end of the barrel is just rounded off, nothing too fancy. I mean, this is not, I think a lot of people would say, well, this is not an absolutely gorgeous pen. It's fairly simple. For a vintage pen, this cannot be too old, as I think this material is plastic, so it's not something from the early 1900s or anything. But I liked it. I saw it on eBay and I liked it, and I wanted to have another project pen that I could work on a bit. It was in pretty good state, but as you will see in the next part of this video, there were some things that could definitely be improved. And even now, it's not perfect, but it's definitely in writing condition. So that's all I needed actually. All right. What do I like about it? What do I not like about it? Well, I like the looks. I like it's a fairly modern looks. A lever filler, very simple system, but it works well. I love the nib. It is nice and flexy without being excessively flexy. You can just write with no pressure and have a normal line, so it's not one of those nibs that open up under the lightest bit of pressure. Very nice. As I said, I like that clip design. It's simple, but it's very functional. Nice and springy. cool pen. Anything I don't like about it, well, it's a vintage pen. I mean, there is some damage. I tried to show you that in the other bit of the video, but I don't think that was too successful. So as you can see, there is some damage on the section. You see that right there? A little bit of a scratch. Maybe I'll try to polish that out a bit more, but it doesn't really bother me. There really isn't anything I don't like about the pen apart from that. I believe this is a Waterman Stalwart. But the Stalwarts I found online only had one center band and not two of those little rings. So maybe I'm wrong. If anyone can identify this and tell me it's not a Stalwart, it does have the Stalwart clip, but that doesn't mean anything. If anyone can ID it and is positive that it's another pen, just let me know. I won't be offended, but then I'll change the title of the video too. And that's all there's to it. So let's restore as a pen, huh? See you in a second. Alright, so let's work at this pen. I always like to assemble some tools that I think I'm probably going to need for this. I got some tissues. These are just little jars of water. Jelly came in this, and that was used up. I've cleaned these out, and I like to put water in these. What I like about this is that they have little lids, so I can knock those over and there will not be water all over my desk. So I have a couple of those. I have my official pen cleaning fluid, which is not for sale, but if you're really nice I may give you the recipe. Then there is some shellac. This is from Richard Binder, but you can get this at Anderson Pens, you can get this at a bunch of places, just shellac. I got some sacks, rubber sacks, because we're probably going to need one. I got some pincers, they are useful. Have a little brush, may be useful. I have a little flashlight. There's a very strong beam, which is useful. I've got some picks, scrapers, stuff, very useful. I got a crochet needle, which can be useful. I've got that was the Velcro. I've got a multi-tool, which I find useful to have around. I've got some of these things, you've seen them in some of my videos. You can buy this, you put this under a carpet, and this is rubbery, it gives you a good grip. And then of course there should be a loop. I have my trusty loop to check stuff out. And what's also quite useful if you want to work on restoring a pen, quite probably the most useful of all things, would be a pen. So here we have a Waterman, made in England. Nothing too fancy, but I kind of liked it, and that's all there's to it. So let's check what we've got. The cap looks good. I always like to check this bit where it actually threads into the pen. That's prone to cracking, but there are no cracks here. That's good, because fixing cracks is a pain in the nib, so to speak. It's really it's difficult. And now I want to check on the inside of the cap, and I'm not sure how well the camera is picking this up, but I can tell you that there is a lot of gunk in there, dried up ink. So I think we're just going to start there, and that's where this little brush comes in. This is not a metal brush, it's just very hard, I suppose nylon or something very hard. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little tissue here. I'm just going to stick that brush in. I'm not applying too much pressure, just moving that in and out. I'm not sure whether you can see all this rubbish, but it's dried up ink. I'm not actually tearing this cap apart, don't worry. I just keep doing that. Now at some point you may actually start to rub bits out of the pen, or sorry, out of the cap, the inside of the cap. So I'm going to check with my little light again, and believe it or not, but things look a whole lot cleaner. Again, I don't think my camera is really doing a good job of picking this up, but there was a lot of gunk in there, and that is a lot better now. Alright. Yes, there's not a whole lot of new gunk coming out, so this was the gunk reduction operation, and that is now clean. Alright, get rid of that stuff. you have a clean cap. I don't really see any brassing on this clip. I'm not sure whether it is a solid gold clip, but it looks good. So sometimes the gold rubs off a little bit, and this clip has not done so, which may actually suggest that it's not gold at all, or that it was just well cared for, or a combination of the above. Now we have the pen. The lever looks to be, the lever would be in good condition. That looks pretty good. It's nice and shiny. It looks like this pen was cared for fairly well. A little bit of muck there, which is scratching off my thumbnail. It's here and there, some dried stuff. That's not the biggest problem. Lever looks like it's in good condition. Yep, seems to work well. The problem here is this disgusting looking nib. I'm not sure how well, let me just switch on the light there. I'm not sure how well you can see this, but this may have been gold one day, but now it's just a black dried ink goo. So what I want to do is try and remove the nib, which may or may not be easy, but we'll see. To do that, we first have to open up the pen. Now this is not hard rubber. It feels like it's plastic of some sort. I don't know. So let's give it a shot. Usually in lever-filled pens, the section just is friction fit, so there is no threads or whatever. I'm going to give this a gentle pull, see what I can... it's already budging. Okay, that was surprisingly easy. That may be a lot harder. If you have a hard rubber pen, don't put it in boiling water, that may discolor it. Don't put it in any hot water. You may want to use a small flame, but that's pretty advanced stuff. I really don't want to go into that now. This was really easy. You see there's a little ridge there. I'm assuming that is what keeps the pen in place. And look at that, we have an original Waterman sac. It looks very flimsy, and I see dried ink on there, which means that there's probably a leak or a tear somewhere. I see all kinds of dings and dents, so I'm afraid we're going to have to get rid of that sac. And that's what we're going to do next. Take a bit of wood, you can just pull it off. Oh, look at that, you just pull it off and it snaps. The rubber has, it hasn't really ossified, sometimes that happens, but the rubber gets really hard. It's still pliable, but this is gotten a bit porous, I suppose. I'll say if this is a collector's item, a real Waterman sac. Alright, and now what we need to do is we need to get that stuff off of the section. I'm just going to start with just ripping it to shreds, basically. And then there's some dried stuff we probably have to scratch off, scrape off. This is all going fairly well, I have to say. Okay, this is where I need one of my little scraping tools. I always like this one. It's just a dental tool. You can pick those up pretty cheaply on eBay. Just search for dental picks or something. You can usually find sets. Okay, just scraping off some of the remains of the sac. One thing I've noticed on this pen, you see that's dried goo and ink. You're going to get dirty fingers. That's how it's going to be. If you want to work on a pen, this is what happens. One thing I noticed here on this section, the reason I'm scraping a bit, by the way, is that in my experience that may roughen up the section nipple a bit, and that makes it easier for the sac to stay attached. Maybe that's rubbish, but that's my feeling. Alright, that actually seems to be fairly clean. I'm just taking a somewhat finer pick and just go around the edges there. Getting those clean. Looks pretty good to me. Something I noticed, I just want to tell you that, is that there's a... I'm not sure whether you can see that. It's probably not going to focus. Let me just use that loop again. There's damage. Damage to the section. There's sort of a scratch, like some animal with really long nails scratched it. But that's alright. Okay, now I'm going to try and remove the nib. I'm going to give it a pull, and it doesn't come out. I'm going to use my grip stuff. And it doesn't come out. No, I'm afraid there's a lot of dried up ink in there. That's what the back end of the feed suggests. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but it seems to be some stuff encrusted there. As this is not hard rubber, I'm just going to give it a soak. See whether that gets rid of some ink. I'll just open up one of my canisters and I put that in. And immediately, see that? That's a couple of, that's, what was that, a few seconds? There's a lot of ink in here. So, another nice benefit of these little jars is that you can close them up. Clearly you don't want to push the nib into the bottom, so make sure the section is small enough for this. And just shake it around a bit. Of course, then you should, in fact, make sure the lid is really on there tightly, which it wasn't. One for the blooper reel. Anyway, so we got this. Look at the disgusting black ink. Disgusting. But the nib is already improving. Look at that. So that's good. I'm going to get rid of that. Take my next jar, going from the other way, because there was ink on that, in the feed. And I'm accessing the feed from the other side now. Alright, this could do with more soaking, but I first want to see whether I can dislodge that nib and feed. If this doesn't work, we're going to do it another way. No, that's not budging. It's in there very tightly. Then it's time for a punch. Here's a block of wood, and here is a little hole. And I want the nib to fit in there, but the section should just not fit in there. And right now, the hole is too small, so what I'm going to do is drill a bigger hole, and I'll see you in a second. Alright, bigger hole was made. A lot of people use metal punches. It's quite likely there's a reason for that. I kind of like wood. You see, this fits nicely now. The good thing of wood is that you can just drill a bigger hole if you need one. Alright, now this is where the multi-tool comes in, because I happen to know that on my multi-tool there is this nice little punch which you can actually just screw off, and it just happens to fit right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, and then I could use my multi-tool. It has a little hammer, but I'm going to use Charlie. Charlie is my pocket hammer. I'm going to take the punch, I'm going to gently place that on the end of the feed, and by the way, this will not work with most modern pens because they have a little nipple sticking out. So don't try this with a modern pen, but try this with this type of pen. You see that there's a feed, it's in there, you can see it. I'm going to put this there, and now I'm going to put I like to position my fingers in such a way that I'm actually supporting the section, and I'm making sure I don't actually knock the section through the wood. And then I try to guide that punch. Looky, looky! The feed is coming up. Can I just pull it out? No, it's encrusted with ink. But we're getting there. You notice I go slow, don't force anything. You got the time. There we go. Look at that. Disgusting. Nice gold nib. Black inky goo. And there's your feed. Alright. Now we have to get the nib out. But as the feed is now gone, that should be... Whoop, there we go. Nib is out. Okay, I take my last jar. Actually, I won't take my last jar. I first take this jar. And I'm going to take my little pincers. Just going to swirl that around there to get the worst bit of the ink off. That water is dirty anyway. This nib seems to be in good condition. It seems to have the tipping. There are no hairline cracks or anything. Waterman's 14 karat nib, and what does it say? NW5. Oh, look at that, an NW5 nib. I don't have a clue what that is because I don't know anything about vintage pens, but it's probably cool. How about that? Alright, doing the same thing with this feed here. And then I put it in there. A lot of ink on there. I may need to get another jar, but we'll cross that bridge once we reach it. Alright, then we have the section. I'm not going to show you yet. I'm just going to check it out with my loupe. I see there's a little bit of inky goo in there. So I'm going to take a... I mean, I can try to show you, but I don't think you really see it. But believe me, there is inky goo in there. You see a little bit. It's not a whole lot, but it's enough. I like to use one of these scrapers. This is rounded off, so unlike the other one that I had, I used to remove those bits of sac. This has sharp corners. I don't want to scrape too badly in there. Why? Because I don't want to alter the shape. I mean, the feed should still fit in comfortably. I don't want to create a leak by destroying the fit of the feed. See that? Disgusting. Why don't people ever clean their pens? This is what I wonder. I'm not applying a lot of pressure. I'm just gently scraping this thing against the insides of the feed. I guess that's about it. Alright. Look at this. There's the black stuff all over the place. Disgusting. Alright. Take my pincers. Twirl that around a bit. Throw it in there. I'm going to need another container soon, but for now this is going to be okay. And now, as you can see, I screw that back in place so that I will not accidentally knock it over. Alright. It's time to fondle the sack. Where do we go? Here's the sack. And I need to have another sack. And I've got a sack assortment. Again, you can buy these at a bunch of places. This again is from Richard Binder. You can get it from Anderson Pens. You can, I know there's a UK supplier. What's it called? Pen Parts and Sacks. I'm sorry, I forgot. I like to mention the people. I honestly forgot. If you want to know a dealer in the UK, then just ask me, and I got the thing bookmarked. Alright, well, this looks like it's roughly the same size as sack. It's probably a little bit smaller in diameter. But it's what I've got right now, so that's what I'm going to use. I don't have a size that's one size bigger. I'm just going to take another water container, and I'm back. I'm going to pour some water in, get that away from the sacks, and then I'm going to get those, oh dear, here they are, I couldn't find them. All those containers look the same and they all contain disgusting black water, so that doesn't really help. What have we got here? That's a feed. Bloody hell, that thing was disgusting. Somewhere in here should be some nibbage. Oh wait, that's a section, also nice. And then we had some nibbage right there. Boom! Shakalaka! It's time to shake the stuff around. You could put this in ultrasonic cleaner. I don't have one, which is why I'm not using one. But for me this is just fine. I'm taking another bit of tissue. Trying to wipe my hands here. Roll it up, put it in the section. This has two purposes. It dries the section and it gets rid of some of the ink bits. I run that brush through once. Nice and clean. Looks good to me. Wipe off my fingers, I roll up that tissue the other way around. Yep, and that brush was good because now this feels really smooth on the inside. That's just how I would like to have it, because then the feed will easily slide in. Alright? Right. Okay, looks good to me. The section can just soak a bit more. It's getting cleaner, but there's still some gunk coming off, so I'll just leave it at that. It can just be in there, no problem. I'm just going to dry off my hands, because for the next chore they have to be dry. Take another bit of tissue. Yep, fingers are dry. Okay. The joys of resacking a pen. That looks like a decent size. Again, it could be a bit bigger, but I'll work with what I've got. Let me just put this in here, you get a bit of a nicer white background. I'm going to need the barrel. Where's the barrel? Here's the barrel. I look inside the barrel. What do I see? Nothing untoward. Looks good. I'm just going to check this out without doing it on the camera. It looks nice. Inside is clean. The little lever assembly and the push bar, they're all inside, they're all in place. Looks good. Operates smoothly. Lovely. Nothing I'll have to do there, which is good because those are a bit more difficult to repair. Alright, so what I like to do here is take the sack, put it in as the right size. But you don't want the sack to be all the way up to the end of this thing. So what I personally like to do is I take the sack, put it in. The bigger the sack, the more ink it holds, obviously. But I think this is actually a nice size, because you can see there's still some room around the sack, which is good. That will give you some air isolation, because if the sack is all the way to the insides of the barrel, heat from your hand may expand the air on the inside, push out the ink, and if the sack is straight until is against the insides of the barrel, that can actually happen, whereas this actually has a buffer. You know, the air can expand a bit, but there's a buffer of air between the sack and the actual outside, or the inside of the barrel. So that's a good thing. Alright, I pull it out, a couple of millimeters, pinch it, take it out. Now, of course there's that nipple, so usually I go a bit further, something like that. What would that give us? Give us something like this. Well, we can do a bit more. There's some nice methods to do this a little bit better and a little bit more efficiently. I always like to fiddle around a bit. That looks good to me. Alright, so I'm pinching it here. This is probably a good idea to take a pair of scissors, but of course I'm a tough guy, so I'm going to use a knife. I know I'm going to regret that, but I will anyway. Okay, I got a little line where I pinched it. I'm going to cut that there in as straight a line as I can, which is easy with a very sharp knife. I put away the knife because I may cut one of my arteries by accident and bleed to death in a video, which is not a particularly nice thing, or so I have heard. This has got to go on there. Is that going to work? That's going to work. Nice size, looks good to me. Alright, now here's the hard bit. I was using this as a little thing to give you a better view. Alright, here's the hard bit. This won't fit. You have to stretch out the sack a bit. That can be easier or harder depending on how small the sack is and how large the nipple is. So ideally you would like a tight fit, because if it's too loose then it may get dislodged. If it's too tight then that's not going to work either, the sack may tear. This is... I would probably want to have one size bigger or half a size bigger, but as I said I don't have it, so this is what I'm going to use. I have made sure that the nipple is clean. I still see a little bit of gunk there, but the sack is not really going to go against that. But alright, maybe clean it up just a little bit more. Meanwhile, the feed is still de-inking, as you can see. Alright, now this is where we need the shellac, and I have these pincers, and they can be fairly useful because they can be used as a sort of a sack spreader. You see, it sort of spreads open, and then you can sometimes it's easier to put that on there. In all honesty, I really like to do it with my bare hands and just try to stretch it out and pull it on there. But some people like to use these sack spreaders. I don't really care. Here we got some shellac. Now what I like to do, that's just a sort of natural, I suppose it's the type of resin, like lacquer glue stuff. What I like to do is I like to cover about half of the nipple, and then your sack is going to push down on that and it will spread the shellac downwards. Also, that stuff makes a fairly decent lubricant, so that should make it a little easier to put the sack on. At least that's my experience, because everything gets a little slippery and sticky, and then it just slides in there. I mean, on there. Looky, 'tis done. And what do we see? We see that I made a fairly nice straight cut. If you have your section like this and the sack stands out like that at a crooked angle, that's not too good, because then it may push against the lever, it may not fill very well, but this looks good to me. If I would put this on there, there is, I guess ideally I would like to have a little less space near the top there, so I would cut off a bit more for a next operation. For now I'm going to try how this works. Again, it's that air buffer thing that's going on. I would like it to be a bit shorter. But hey, I'm doing this live, man! Alright, so we got this covered. Now, some people ink this up after an hour. I'm going to leave this for a night. So it will not be inking up yet. I'm going to leave that a night so that the shellac can really, sort of harden, or whatever it does to really work well and make sure it's really on there nice and tight. This is the time where, of course, you can just stick your fingers in there, but I'm not sure why I'm using this. My hands are dirty anyway, but it doesn't really matter. Here we got me old pen flush. There we go. Pen flush dunking time. Now, I'm not really secretive about this. This is just water, just regular tap water, not distilled water, not boiled water, nothing, just water, straight from the tap. Add about 10% ammonia, just common household ammonia, nothing fancy, and then a little bit of dishwashing detergent, just a little bit, 2 or 3 drops, that's all it takes. I found that to be a nice mixture that cleans your pens well. Afterwards you flush them very well with water, nice clean water, not disgusting grubby water, because that would kind of undo the effect of the pen flush. For now, I think this is doing pretty well. Alright, so what I want to have is some more clean water. I'm going to leave you for a second. I'm going to get some clean water while this is in there, and I'll see you in a second. Alright, and now I'm going to take out this feed and put it in some water so that it can sort of de-gunk and get that ammonia out. You want to make sure the ammonia is not actually on your feed or nib when you ink it up, for the very simple reason that it dilutes ink, and you don't really want that to happen. Alright, I've got a pretty nice nib here, which is actually in considerably better condition than I expected it to be. I thought it would be a lot worse. What I'm going to do, now that I'm just waiting for that feed to get rid of the ammonia, just have a clean tissue there, is I'm going to use a jeweler's polishing cloth on the nib. This one is from B.R.E. I got that with my B.R.E. pen. But you can also buy these from jewelers. You have to use the inside first, and then you use the outside, and it's sort of like a polishing cloth. So that's what I'm going to do here before. Alright, I'm just going to wipe that and rub that a little bit. This doesn't take long. You don't have to do this for hours. In fact, I think it's best not to do it for hours, because it's probably some type of abrasive that's in that little cloth. Of course, with a nib, you want to be careful when you do this. You don't want to misalign the tines by pushing too hard. So I'm sort of going along with the length of the nib here. I always like to do the underside too. Some people, I suppose, would find that ridiculous because you don't really see that bit except the very end of the tines. But I like to have the nib completely spiffy. Alright, I'm going to use the outside. Remember that before image that should be on your retina. And here we have the after image, whoops, which is a nice shiny nib. Lovely. These polishing cloths can really make a difference. I once had a terrible Waterman nib which was really dull and ugly, and with a bit of fooling around with the polishing cloth it really became a nice and shiny nib. Now that I am here, looks like it has some flex to it, or at least some spring, which is nice. Let's check out the tipping there. The tipping is perfect. Looks really... can I do without the light there? It looks really nice, shiny. All the tipping is there, no tipping gone. Just going to check this out. Alignment. It's pretty good. The right tip is a little bit lower than the left tip, but it's really minor, and that may actually disappear once it's on the feed, so I'm not going to adjust anything. And here we have that feed. How is that feed doing? I have to check that out with my loupe. Sorry for being off screen for a second there. That actually looks pretty good. What I'm going to do now is just very carefully, what I have here is a crochet needle. Those have pretty fine little hooks. I'm going to run that down that feed very gently. I'm not really scraping, I'm just sliding it along to get rid of some possible ink deposits. But it actually looks pretty good. Alright, take a clean sheet tissue to put that in there. You see there's still some gunky stuff still colouring black a bit, but that may well be my fingers. If you ask me, that feed is clean. It looks pretty clean to me. Channels are clean. I just smeared some finger grease on there. Let me just clean that off. Alright. Nib and feed. That's maybe a bit much. I kind of like this alignment, but we'll see how far we get. It was probably on there a bit further, but that's alright. I think this would be alright. Just pinching that, and grabbing that section with its new sac. And there was no up, down, bottom, left, right, etc. Just sliding in that nib and feed, which is very easy now because everything is nice and clean. Looks good to me. So this can go into the barrel. Usually the lever, that is lever, is offset at about 90 degrees from the nib on a lot of pens, not on all pens, but on a lot of pens. Now one thing I'm going to do before I put that in there is I'm going to take some talcum powder. This is just 100% pure talcum powder. That's actually pretty hard to get. A lot of the stuff you get has perfume or something in it. I got this from AndersonPens.net. But again, there's always a bunch of sources where you can pick this stuff up. But if you buy it from a pen source like that, you know that you're getting the right stuff. Just putting this out of the way for a second. The talcum powder will, a light coating of the sac will make sure, this looks really ridiculous of course, but this will absorb some moisture, make sure that your sac stays in good condition, will not actually rot away because of spilled ink or liquid or whatever stuff that's going on. Sort of a moisture barrier, which is a good thing. Alright, that's nicely powdered. Just wiping off my finger there. And I'm going to slide whoops, slide this back in place. The reason I do it this way around with the lever on that side and not this way around with the lever on that side is that if I do it this way, then the word Waterman's made in England can actually be read. Alright. Sliding, sliding, there we go. It's a little offset. I don't want to twist this too much because I don't want to twist the sack around the lever unit, but looks good. I can compress the sack. I'm not sure whether the camera's microphone picks this up, but I hear a sort of sucking noise when I do that, which means the sack is being compressed and then depressed. Section's in all the way. Here's that little bit of damage I've told you about before. In all honesty, I'm not really bothered by that. It looks pretty cool. So one thing that you can try to do, try and start on a little bit of an inconspicuous area of the pen. See whether that jeweler's cloth does something for the outside. It does appear to do so. It doesn't make any scratches, so I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to run that through there. La-di-da. And there we have a nice, fairly shiny pen. Some people would want to cover the imprint to make sure you don't actually blast that off. I didn't do that because this is not such an abrasive surface, this cloth. But if you're going to do this with micro mesh or with something else, you probably want to put some tape over there, something to make sure you're not actually doing something and actually getting rid of the imprint, which would be a pity. Here we have that cap with the clip. May as well give the clip its turn with this little cloth on the top of the cap. It's not really a diamond, but whatever you call the top bit and crown, that is not really a jewel on top of the cap. Looks nice to me. Maybe those rings, the center band. It's not really a center band, but it's center bands, I suppose. Here we have those. Now doing the whole cap, making that nice and shiny. A lot of people really like their pens to be nice and shiny. For me, I kind of think it has a bit of a, how should I put that? It has its charm when the cap is not, when a pen is not completely shiny. It's a pre-owned pen, it's used, it has some history. I like the gold parts to be shiny, like this clip. Looks nice. Those little rings look good. The whole thing is pretty shiny. Yep, looks good to me. So here we have re-sacked the pen. We have removed the feed and the nib. We have cleaned those very well. We have tried to polish the outside of the pen just a little bit to give it that nice shiny look. And you know what? That's all there's to it. We have basically restored the functionality of a pen. Now this was fairly simple surgery because this was an extremely cooperative patient. Quite often it can be a little bit harder. Don't lose your patience. Don't lose your temper. Go slow. If it really doesn't work out, you've tried, you've done your best, send it to a professional. They can do things that you know really require some training. But for now, I think we've done a good job. So the next time I see you, a night will have passed. I'm actually opening this up, and actually I'm carefully removing that section, sorry, the barrel, so that this can really dry up well. I'm just going to put it in a little container. I always have these little things, some pen parts in there, and it can just dry there, except this is not a good thing because this may actually dislodge the sack. So I'm just going to put it on a stand. It's out of view of the camera, but that's alright. It's going to rest there all night, and that's all there's to it. I'll see you again tomorrow, and then we're going to ink up the pen. We're going to see how it writes. We're going to see all those things, and I hope to see you then. So, time warp. Alright, so more than a day and a night have passed. we have the pen here, and we have the section with its little sack. The nib now nice and shiny. Feed looks shiny. That looks pretty tight, so we're going to assemble it. And that's just friction fit. Fits nicely. Okay, now it's time for the big moment, right? We have to ink this up, see whether it works. This is just Parker Quink Blue. It's what I had, that's neutral, that I had lying around. I'm just gonna listen to the noise here. That looks like it's drawing up ink. Okay, let's have a quick check there. Look at that. Drops of ink just flying out. It's drawing up ink alright. And just wait a bit. And operate the lever again. Just wait a bit. And then operate the lever just once more. And wait a bit. I'm grabbing a small, I always have one of these small Rhodia pads lying around to do quick pen tests. I'll have to get a new one soon, I see. Alright, so we get rid of that. I'm just wiping it off here. And we take a sheet of paper. It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! And so we have restored a pen. What I'm going to do next is a writing sample. We're going to try out what this pen can do. And that's all there's to it. See you in a second. Okay, writing with what I believe is a Waterman Stalwart. Now I could be wrong, because the Stalwarts I found online have one center band and this one has two, but I don't find any name on the pen. So we have to work with what we've got. The nib says NW5. Now I'm sure that's not Northwest London, but it is something, and I'm not a Waterman vintage expert. I can probably find that information online. For now, let's just do some writing. I have to say the pen is very comfortable to hold. This section is really pleasant. I don't feel, these threads are not sharp at all, so it's a very pleasant sensation. Writes smoothly. It doesn't get stuck on the paper or anything. It's a pretty nice smooth nib. I would say this is a pretty fat fine, or a nice, maybe somewhat, no, I think it would be a good medium. Yeah, I'd probably call this a medium. Let's do some fast writing, see how well the feed keeps up. Just checking whether it's primed. Yes, it is. Looks good. I don't see any skipping. And now what I'm interested in is flex, because these vintage Waterman nibs can be a lot of fun, but sometimes they're very rigid. So I'm interested to see what we can get out of this one. This is no pressure, and I'm going to apply a bit more pressure with every stroke. I'm waiting for a "that's what she said" joke. and it just keeps going. How about that? Lovely bit of vintage flex, 14K. You will not find this in pens today. Nib sings a bit, which is quite pleasant. Lovely, lovely nib. Okay, then finally I would like to do some wetness testing. Quink is a quick drying ink, and yet I think this is a pretty wet nib without being excessively wet. And of course, if you would go to that writing, you see it's still wet. See, that is still wet, but that is Rhodia paper, flex writing with a lot of ink. Alright, so here you have it. Here we have a pen. In total, I think I paid, I don't know, 13, 15 euros. We had to do some work on this, but I've shown you how, and you end up with something that can do this. Alright, so it was not hours of work. Of course, you'll have to buy some materials, and you have to maybe factor that into the price of the pen. And it's not a perfect pen. It has a little bit of damage on the section, but you know what, I can live with that. It's a vintage pen. It has shown use. Someone has actually used this instead of just put it in a cupboard as a showpiece. And I like that. It's a bit of history. I hope this was useful. I hope you have enjoyed the tour of some basic pen restoration work. I know that I'm going to enjoy this pen, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.